Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy beading. Well, great to see you guys. And I've got a really good project for today. It's a bright one and sunny for the season. And it's flower power brick stitch stud earrings. And so brick stitch is really fun. And I've got some extras to share today that can enhance the enjoyment of doing brick stitch that I've discovered I really enjoy. So I thought I will share them with you guys today. And then hopefully inspire you to go out there and find more patterns and make more stuff like this. There's just so many cool ones out there. And so what I have on the mat, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my brighter lights really quick. Get those going. Here we go. So what I have on the mat here is, of course, the samples, which are really, really pretty. They came out so nice. I like the way they look. And then I have the beads that I used. I used a bunch of Delicas. And the colors are all in PDF. So you should have the Michaels SKU numbers. So like you could put those in the app, or you can put those in the website. Or if you're shopping in person, you can just shop by the color, by the names. That's in there too. But the beads that I'm using, I'm down to the little last bit here, but this is the White Pearl AB. And it's a DB202. So that's the Delica number for that one. And the cool thing about Delica numbers is you can always find, you know, what color to use on a pattern, and then go and cross-reference that by the part numbers here on your tubes. And so I'm going to use like a luminous pink, 2036. You know, this is an opaque black. This one is the 654. It's a dark maroon, very cool color. Here's a good cinnabar red. This one is 723. And last but not least, a luminous, yellowish golden. I think we called it Sun. I'm not seeing the name here, but oh, we did. No, there's the name right there. Calling it Sun. And it really does look like a little splash of sunlight. So I love Delicas. They are really fun to play with because of the way they just pop into place. They make beading really easy. And so this, I would say for the level of brick stitch, like if you're brand new to brick stitch, this is approachable. It has it's not the most super beginner friendly, but it's still, you know, it's still doable. The reason it's not 100% beginner is we have an increase spot where you're stitching along and you have to, you know, branch out, but that honestly, not hard to do. And I'm going to show it to you. And then there's, you know, of course, decreases, which is a natural thing that happens in brick stitch. And so I thought what I would do is I would just walk you through it. We do have another class that was targeted more to a beginner, and that one was a brick stitch bees. We did that last year, and it is available on you can find it on the Michaels YouTube channel, and you can find the PDF at blog.johnbead.com and just type in brick stitch bees and it'll come up. If you're looking for more patterns from us too, that's a great way to find it. And a lot of you guys were with us in December last year when we did the ornaments. We did a really cool chrysanthemum flower, and we also had a cardinal and like a bulb. And that was one of those 2-hour workshops that we had. And I got a suggestion in that class, which at the time I didn't fully process, and I didn't remember who gave the suggestion. Since then, I've emailed and messaged a bunch of people trying to figure out who it was, and I still haven't been able to find them. So if you're here today, this shout out is for you. You gave me this idea. I discovered that instead of doing a ladder stitch start, which a lot of people, when they start their brick stitch, what they're doing is they're ladder stitching the widest row in the pattern, or one of the widest rows, kind of toward the middle usually. And they do a ladder stitch of just that one row, and then they build their brick stitch up and down from that. Well, somebody asked, hey, can I use peyote stitch to start? And I think I said, well, I'm not sure, I haven't tried it or something like that, but I really didn't think it was possible. And then I went and looked, and it turns out that it's way cool and better and faster, and it enhances for me the enjoyment of making these kind of projects, because it's like cleaner, it's less bulky. With the ladder stitch, you've got a lot of thread bulking up on that row, and you can kind of see it sometimes, especially with these little teeny beads. This way, it takes a trick to get the hang of it, especially if your pattern's not written that way. You have to find it in your pattern and identify where you're going to work that. But once you've got that down, no problem, you got it. So I did that for us here in this design to illustrate, but anybody can really do it with any pattern. So I'm just going to slide my mat aside just really quick and show you what's going on here in the pattern. So this is the brick stitch pattern. This is the legend. It shows you all the colors. And what you would typically do is you'd grab a ruler and you would identify your widest row. Grab my ruler here really quick. And you would say, okay, so my widest row is this one. And you'd be like, okay, I'm going to ladder stitch that row. Well, you can peyote stitch that row and the row above it. You could also do the row below it. Either would have been fine. I just chose to do the one above. So what you're seeing here is this, that. And then I'm going to just draw some lines really quick. Here and here. So we're going to peyote stitch that. And that's what this is right here. And from there, we'll build our brick stitch up with a part of the thread, and we'll leave a super, super long tail over here that we'll bring down and use to finish the bottom. And you'll notice we have one little increase right here. That's our increase row. And we'll do that. That happens right here. And so I'm going to show you guys all the tricks I know for how to do brick stitch following patterns. And I do have a sample worked ahead so we can stick to our time, but with any luck, we might be able to get through the whole thing, like start to finish. I'm going to try. If we can't, I do have a backup worked ahead. Okay, so I'm going to set my backup aside really quick. Let's move the pattern over. Get our mat back here. What's on the mat right now is, and I'm going to work kind of close, so which you'll see may not be all the beads here at the top, but this is, I laid them out as they are in a legend. So if you take a look at your legend, you've got color A, B, C through F, and I just laid them out in that order, just for clarity for me. And lots of folks like to label. They like to label their piles, and that's a great thing you can do. Just get a little label sticker and write on it. And sometimes, like, you could even find the ones that have little buckets, the little mats that have a bucket. I saw something like that somewhere. Can't remember where, but that works too. And off camera here, I've got my ruler and my pattern, and I'm just working along with that. Okay, I'll move that over here. All right, so starting with the beads that I've got on the mat, I'm just going to move these. Thread. I didn't talk to you guys yet about thread, but it's really easy. So the thread that I'm using is Nymo, but you can use anything you've got. It is a little easier, I feel like, to do these kind of things with a thin thread versus like a wildfire, but I do think wildfire will work. I've seen Meredith Roddy do a bunch of designs with wildfire that use Delicas in different stitches, and it does work out good. So Nymo, or if you want to use wildfire, go for it. And then I've got some thread magic here. If you're using one of the threads that's not plasticized, so like if you're going to use any of the Nymos or the nylon threads, it can help to just kind of run, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And then last but not least, right at the end, we're going to bring out some glue and studs, of course, to glue to the back and make these little stud earrings. And thinking ahead to, like, if you're a seller, how cool would it be to put these little earrings onto an earring card made of scrapbook paper that had like a background? Maybe it could be like some leaves or, a little scene, and you can make all kinds of little shapes. There's patterns all over the internet that you can find once you've got the skills to just sit down and make them, and pop them onto some cool scrapbook paper and line those up at your booth. And they're eye-catching. People love them. They just walk up and pick them up. So just something to think about for all that. We got that gift giving season coming up. It's never too early to think about it. So before I cut my thread, in the handout, I recommended about 55 inches, and 30 of those inches we're going to leave like at the beginning. They're going to become the part you make the bottom with, and then you'll use the rest to make top, to do the peyote part on the top. So about 55 inches or so. I'm just wingspanning it. And scissors here. Set that aside. So with the thread heaven, it's this little bucket, right? And you can just slide your thread into it, kind of push it down, and then just pull through. So there's that side. It's my starting side. I'll probably needle that. Look at all that memory from the spool, the spin. See, it just goes nice and flat. And I'm going to do that one more time. Bring the cap on. Make sure it's in between grooves on the sides. And then we're just going to pull from the side. We've already kind of coated already. Cindy was saying her wingspan's more than, yeah, I think mine probably is too. I did like a lazy wingspan, or didn't totally fly away. All right, and there we go. So that's all you got to do to condition your thread. It makes it easier to get it through a needle, all that jazz. And then I didn't show the needles, but I'm using just a size 10. I'm using what's stuck in my mat, so not 100% sure what it is. This is forgiving. This is one where you can use any needle, as long as it's not like a really big needle. So 10, 12, whichever you got. And then just thread that needle. I realize I did that kind of fast, but if you're having any trouble threading your needle, one of the things you might want to do is just take the end and hold it really close to the end of your fingers like that. And then just bring the needle to the thread. Makes it just a little easier. And sometimes it works right away, sometimes it doesn't. And we'll try to spin this one here. There we go. So you'll just be able to get it on. If you keep trying, it'll get there. But I've already got this one here, so I'm just going to take that off. All right. So the peyote stitch start. And if you're, for example, if you didn't have this spelled out already, like we do in our pattern here, again, the way to generate that for yourself in any pattern is just to identify your largest row and pick the one above it or below it. And then the way you'd want to string it is you want to start with the bead that is sitting alone. So in this case for me, I'm going to have to string an A, then an A, and then a B, and then go back through the A. And then you've got peyote stitch starting, right? So then you would come around, string that B, right? And go down through the B. Then you'd string a C and come up through the next B. So I illustrated it here, but if you were starting a new pattern, you would just be going like this through it. So give it a try. Don't be afraid to like make mistakes. And I do think it really makes it much more, faster to create these designs. So just off camera here, again, what I've got is I've got the pattern sitting right here under my mat. Maybe I'll slide over so you can see that a little bit. But I'm starting with this. I'm starting with A, and then A, and then B, and then I'm going to go back through the A. So there's my two A's. Here's a B. And let's go back through the A. And remember to leave that 30-inch tail, because that's how we're going to create the bottom half of our design. And I want to make sure I highlight what direction to go, because that matters. I'm trying to think of how best to explain it. So this is my tail side right here. And this is the side I've got my needle on. And what I want to do is go back through the first A, but I want to go through it in that direction. So toward the way the tail's coming out. So like peyote stitch, but literally just one column, right? Or one bead, sorry, yeah. And so we're going to pull the working and tail threads apart. Classic peyote start. Help those beads sit side by side. Just by pulling tight. If they don't automatically do it, just adjust them until they do. And you'll get something that looks like that. Everybody see that okay? So there's our first peyote stitch right there. And I'm going to hold that tight. This is the tail side over here that I'm holding, just pinching it. And now taking a look over here at my pattern, I've got to put a B now on. So let's pick up a B. And let's go back through the B that's here in my hand. It's loosening up on me just a little bit. When you do that, you'll start to get single column peyote. See how that's going like that? It's really cool. Next bead I've got to pick up is a C. Let's grab C. And then we're just doing through the next up bead, right? Let's pull tight. And it'll sit like that. Let's grab another C. And something I'm doing here with my thumbnail, I'm holding all the thread to keep it tight. See, I'm like pinching that thread that's exiting where I last added it, because it does kind of get a little loose on you. But like with every stitch in the world, the one you add straightens up the one before it. So it does get a lot easier as you keep going. These first ones might be a little hard, but if you just keep going, they do tighten up. And even at this stage with 6 beads on, if I had loose problems right now where it was everything's in the right place, but it's kind of loose, you can still tighten it. Like, and it'll tighten the whole thing. You can take your thumbnail and go like that to one side. And you can take your thumbnail here and tighten that side. And it'll all tighten up for you. It won't work as well as you get more on, but at this stage, you can still do it. Okay, so what's my next color? I still need 2 more C beads. So here's my first of the 2. Pick up a C, and then just go in through the next up bead. And that got loose on me. So let's tighten that up. Tighten. Pull that through. And get that. Get another C bead. Get through that one. All right. And so just looking at where I am on the pattern, I've done all those. All the C's. So now we've got to switch to D. And D is this color over here. So it's just a lighter red. And I'm looking here at the pattern and I've got 3 Ds to do. So what I actually do is I just count how many are there. 1, 2, and 3. So there's my 3 D beads. Sorry, yeah, 3 D beads. Right there. It's a little hard to see, sorry guys, but the I just did those 3 Ds. So now I'm exiting from that D. So now I want to put on a C, go back to the D, and then we're going to do 3 Ds again. And this pattern is symmetrical. So if you drew a line through the center here, it's symmetrical on these sides. So you're going to be repeating, once you get to the center point, the stuff on this side and that side, which is handy if you're somebody like me that likes to flip your work in your hand. It is not symmetrical if you ran a center line here and worked up and down. Those are different. And every pattern is going to be different on you. And so you're going to want to take a close look at all patterns and see, you know, how that plays out. Let's get closer here. Okay, so the next one I have to pick up is a D. This is my center. So far, so good. And I've got to go back to some Ds now. And again, I'm just working that single column peyote stitch. And I'm working it with my widest row and the one above it. There's D. There's one more. Okay, 4 C's. And how do I know 4 C's? Let me show that just really quick to make sure I explain that right. I did those 3 Ds. And I'm just looking, I'm seeing, look, I've got 4 C's to put on there. And I'm not totally paying attention to if I'm top or bottom. I just know I got to put 4 on there. And since I'm already exiting from that D, I know C through the D, C through the C, C through the C, C through the C. And then I'll do BA, 2 B's, 2 A's. So in a way, you could kind of write that down as a pattern, but it would be easier to just look at it, I think. But if you wanted a word chart, that's something you could do. You could take that row, because it's probably not going to be very long, and you could write yourself a word chart, and each row would only have 1 bead in it. Make sure I'm working with the right colors here. There's D. You guys, I mixed up my C's and my D's. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna grab this really quick. Yeah, I put them in the opposite spots. It looks like I did. Did I? No, that one's right. That one's right. Sorry. Let me double check that I did not make a mistake with you guys here. Happens. So we're working these 2 rows. Oh, I did. Okay. I'm going to show you how to fix that. Okay. Let's pull out. So you do have to take your needle off. If you made a mistake like I did, super easy to get the beads off. I see where I made the error. I'm going to pull this off. Pinch it like that. And just pull. And I'll show you what I did. I was chatting. Okay. When I got to the D bead there, I was supposed to switch back to C and I didn't. I kept picking up D's. So that's what I did wrong. So there's a C here, and now I need to do 3 D's. Okay. So I'm just going back in time and repairing what I did. Oop. And my needle's off. I think I should have made those colors a little different. You know what I mean? But I didn't. Okay. So there's that. There's one more C. And then here's my other C. Okay, now I need my 4 Ds. And they're going to be true Ds, not fake ones. Sorry, 4 Cs. For some reason, I want the darker color to be my D bead. That's what I'm getting thrown off. Even though I made this pattern like 5 times. Here we go. Let's check it. Okay, we've got that C in the center there. Then I actually went back and used the real D beads. And now I'm going to add the light color C beads there, right? All right. Oh, C is dark color, Danielle. There we go. Darker C, lighter D. If that's throwing you guys off, I apologize. I should have made the darker color the color that's down the alphabet further. If for some reason my brain wants to pick up the different ones. And Cindy's saying, oh yeah, Cindy's mentioning a class that we did. It was one where we made slider bracelets, like where we put sliders on a single column of peyote, but we did that with like 2 drop. And that is a cool one to look at. Was that 2 Valentines ago? I think it was. It was a while ago. If at the end, I'll try to find it. I'll drop a link for you guys. But I just finished the 4 C beads, which are dark maroon beads. And now I'm going to pick up the 2 Bs. Okay. Did I pick up a bead? No, I did not. Okay. There's that one. And these just don't have the contrast here on the screen. I'm actually watching myself stitch on the screen. And they have a lot more contrast in real life than they do here on the video. but they're pretty different in the tubes. Let me show you guys what I mean, actually. It's kind of a cool little thing to think about. Oh, so there's the peyote row. And again, that was this row completed. And even in my illustration, C and D are not standing out. Look what happens in the tubes. Check this out. They're very different. You can tell they're a totally different color. And even in the piles, they're like, yeah, those are completely different colors. When you put them one by one, next to each other in a pattern, just disappear. We talked about this a little bit in our color theory class, but it makes a really big difference in patterns. You need very stark differences, like sharp contrasts, in order for you to be able to see them apart from each other. And so evidently I ignored that when I made this pattern. But and Wanda's saying starting with the widest row, is this considered a single row? Yeah, so let me just really quickly show you that one more time to recap what I just did. So let's say you just bought this pattern on Etsy or something and you were wanting to start as a peyote start instead of laddering. So usually what people will do is they would take a pattern like this, they would identify which row has the most beads across, and they would highlight that row and then they would ladder stitch it. So that means they'd be ladder stitching that row right there, right? But what we just did is we did a peyote stitch start where we included that row. And so what we had to do was we strung an A, went through the A, strung an A, strung an A, strung a B, and then went back through the A. And then we came down here and went through the B, or picked up a B, sorry, and went through the B. So like that, right? And that's illustrated here at the bottom for you guys to see. So now where are we? We're over here. We're exiting from the top of that A, right? Which puts us right here. So we're going to build the next row of brick stitch here. So we'll start with, and it's a in brick stitch, if you pick up a bead and go under the first thread bridge, that's a decrease. So every row you add is going to naturally decrease unless you deliberately put 2 beads in the first thread bridge, which is what we're going to do down here later. So when you want to do a brick stitch pattern, just remember, if they show you the pattern and you see the bead that it's kind of sitting in between the 2 beads in the row below, so sitting there, that's that bead in the first thread bridge. And then each subsequent bead in each subsequent thread bridge. And when you're working with Delicas, it's so precise, it works great. So we're going to do that, these 2 rows, and then we're going to do a major in a decrease, which is you'll be coming out of here, you'll go down and up, and then you'll brick stitch that into the thread bridge that sits above these 2 beads. What's a thread bridge? Thread bridge is what you see here. When we join beads, we create these little bridges above them. So like that's a thread bridge right there. My needle's under it. And it's a cool place to anchor. And so that's all we're going to do now is, and the method I'm showing you is my preferred method for brick stitch. There are other methods. There's a two bead start in rows. I think that is a good way to start too, but I like to match my thread color to my bead. And then I feel like it sits like flatter this way. So what I do is I pick up 1 bead and I go underneath the first thread bridge. Also, it is clearer when you're following patterns to do it 1 bead at a time. You don't have to guess where you are, and it makes decreases easier. Like massive decreases, like the one we're going to do at the top. So what I did is I picked up that bead, I went under the first thread bridge, and then I came back up through that bead. And I'm going to do that again with the next color in my pattern row, which is a B. So here's that B bead, got that. And then I'm just going to go under the next thread bridge here, pull it through. And then go up through that bead. And you're always going up through it from what is kind of considered underneath it. Let me show you what I mean. So here's that bead now, the next one in our pattern. Here's that third thread bridge. So just go under it. And as you're pulling through, do you notice the direction that your thread's coming out of the bead? That's what we'll call it underneath the bead. And the direction that the thread is heading into the bead, we'll call that the top. And so when you pull tight, you end up with that. And you just want to come back up through that bead from under it. So I usually just kind of flip it a little bit to give myself a way to get under it. And then just come up through that bead. Don't worry if it gets loose, because I think that if it's loose, it's going to tighten up when you pull right here. So see how it's all kind of wonky? Everything's a little bit loose right now. When I pull tight, it tightens up a lot. I've got one more B bead. Go under this one. Another really cool thing that I thought I'd mention now about the peyote start, why I like it, why I've really grown to like it, is that these thread bridges aren't super, super tight. So sometimes when you've done your ladder row, you've had to reinforce it because the beads just kind of look all wonky. Even with Delicas, like sometimes you have to reinforce. And then when you come along and you're trying to get your needle under these doubled thread bridges, it's thick, it's tight, and it's hard to get your beads to sit flat. And so they really sit flat like super easily right now for me. And I really do think that's because of the peyote start. So then the pattern here is telling me to pick up a C now, the next one in my row. So the C bead, that's the dark maroon. Saying that for myself. I probably should have labeled my piles, guys. I didn't. And here's another C. And again, we're just picking up that thread bridge. We're switching back to B now, 3 Bs. And here's a great example of it getting super loose. So see what I did? I kind of pushed it. I probably punctured the thread, but bravely going. When you pull tight, it all still goes back right in the spot. How cool is that? Grab another one. Definitely punctured thread on that one. It's not ideal to do that, but it's forgiving. You can get away with it. And I did flip my work just now. I flipped it left to right. So I think I have an easier time that way. Yeah, definitely. So there's 3, and then let's end with 1 A bead. And I'm just ignoring the tail. This is that 30-inch tail we left at the beginning. I've just been ignoring it for now. If it is in your way or bothering you at all, you can get rid of it by doing this. So it'll be exiting actually from the top bead, but we're going to use it to build under here. So what I usually do is I'll just take, and it'll be different on every pattern, guys, but on this one, you can take this one, and I'm just poking it through the bead below and just pulling it to get it out of the way, because that's where I'm going to want to be when I start that row. And it helps tighten up my thread bridge above too. And it is showing on the side. I do that on purpose. I like that. So I've got one more row to do, and it is let me show you where I am on the pattern. So we completed this row right here. And then I want to do this row. It is the same type of row, meaning it's just another first bead under the first thread bridge, regular decrease row. But I'm going to show you the 2 bead start in case somebody doesn't want their thread showing. There's another way to do it. And then of course, what I just did here, you'd have to weave around if you wanted to hide the thread. But if you want to see what a 2 bead start looks like, I'll do that real quick. So the colors I need for this one are 2 A's. So there's 2 A's on there. And I'm going to have to go through the second thread bridge, right? Because I picked up 2 beads. So I'll go through the second one. Just count 1, 2 over. And pull tight. And then come up through that second bead from underneath it. Pull down. And you get this. But do you see that bead there? I'm going to try to make it sit straight by pulling tightly. You can do it. Delica's, it'll do it really easily. If this was a round bead, it wouldn't be as friendly. So a round seed bead, well, you would have to go back and straighten it out. Also, if you're doing a 2-stack, you would need to straighten it out too. And sometimes the 2-stack, I prefer to do the double bead start, which means you pick up 4, right? But in this case, if you like that way, I think for Delica's, it's going to work. So try it and decide which one you like better. I still prefer to do the single bead. It's just the way I like to do it. But both are great. All right, and so here's the next bead in my pattern is another A. So grab that really quick. So you've seen both ways you can start those rows. And now let's get the middle here, 3 B's. And I'm going to show that big decrease. And also, if you're using all the same colors as me, the luminous pink right here, this little neon-y one, I'm selecting for the extra luminous ones, the more saturated, because they have a little bit of tiny bit of variation because they're coated on the inside. So I've been grabbing the brightest, most bold ones. Okay, almost there. All right, so that row's done. It comes together so pretty. Look at that. That's really cool. Okay, I think brick stitch is really satisfying. It's really nice to do. We just finished, let me grab my pencil out. Okay. We just finished this one. So we're here now. And we need to get over here to put our 4 A's above. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go down through this bead and then up through this one, up through this A. So from here, I'm just going to go down and then back up. And when you do that, if you feel like your thread is showing here, anywhere underneath it, spin those beads in your hand and then tighten it. And it actually should pop in underneath them pretty good. I feel like that really worked out. Okay, so I'm going to grab my next bead. I need to put 4 color A into, in this case, I'm going under the thread bridge. That is just to the left of the bead I'm exiting. Pull that through. I've just got 2 more beads to go here, and we are done with the top. How are we doing on time? Right? Good. I'm glad I have my jump ahead sample though. Okay, so that's it for the top. And what I would do to weave in from here, because we don't need this top strand anymore, is go ahead and just bring it through some beads. So from here, and my choice is to be symmetrical with what I did over here. So since I jumped up and sided that bead, I'm going to just go down through this bead here. And again, that is going to make my thread show on the side, but that's a choice. I like it. It also kind of locks that bead down on the side. A lot of my habits come from working with round beads. Round beads are a little harder to get to do what you want. And so that's where I get that from. And I'm just weaving around. I'm just going through beads. And this is how you weave in. Down through this one. Okay. So where we are in the pattern here, we've got just the top rows done. We've finished all of that. So all of that above. Now what we got to do is flip it over and work down from here. And I've already completed on my sample, I've already completed these 2 rows because they're just regular decrease rows like what we've been showing above. So with my thread exiting over here, I just created that row and then I created that row. And where I am right now on the other sample is I'm ready to do this increase. And it's just a 1 bead increase. So it's not a big deal, but let me bring that over and show you. And actually this one's already got a needle on it. So it's good. And what you see here, you see this strand hanging out here. I actually never trimmed it. I left it just in case I needed it. Because in the case of this design, I might have left not a full 30 inches. So if you're ever unsure and you're not sure you'll have enough, just leave your other thread hanging out here. And it's been left in the row where we ended up where we just left off. So it's just left there. And I've just been pinching it, keeping it out of the way. And then what's here is my tail thread right where we left it. And then 2 rows have been worked. And again, that was the 2 rows that I showed. I worked that row and then I worked that row. And now I'm trying to put an increase row into that row. So I'm going to pick up, this is one case where you'll have to pick up the 2 beads. Or I'm going to pick up the A and the B that you see here at this arrow. I'm going to pick up the A and the B, and then I'm going to put those both under the first thread bridge, which is the one that's overhanging my A and B. All right. So just get that tail out of the way there. Okay. So again, I need to pick up an A and a B in that order. There's those 2 beads. And we're going to go under the first thread bridge. What I'm doing there is I'm pulling to tighten my thread bridge because it felt loose. Pull there. Go up. And what'll happen before you tighten is you'll get something that looks a little bit funny like that. See how it's kind of sideways and a little bit wonky? Put your thumbnail over those beads at the bottom like that, and then just give that a really tight pull. You might even hear a pop, a little tiny pop, and then let's go. Boop. Super cool. And on the pattern over here, it looks like I've got to grab a C now. Dark maroon is C. And then just next thread bridge. Okay, and then 2 Ds. The rest of this is going to go super fast, guys, because the rest of it is going to get shorter and shorter. Every row will be less than the one before it. So this is D, which is that cinnabar red. I need to put 2 of those on. Okay. And then, did I pour the black beads out? I did not. Where did they go? I skipped a color. And then I just need that 1. That's my center bead. All right, 2 Ds. I missed the first comment, but I see the comment about Legos. Yeah, this is like way better than Lego. And I made a bunch of patterns. If you guys are interested, message me in this, but I made a bunch of patterns for my kiddos, Minecraft, Roblox, Kirby from Nintendo, but I can't share them because I'll get copyrighted. So I can't sell them. But mom to mom, if you want some of those, just let me know. They put them on their backpacks and stuff. They really like them, the little kiddos. Okay, so now I want to show this really quick. We have to increase again, but we're at the end of a row. This is the one that I really wanted you guys to see. It's where people get stuck. So here I am. I've got nowhere to go, right? I just used my last thread bridge and I have to put on another bead. super easy to do. You can take that next bead, which for us is an A bead, and you can ladder stitch it. And you can do that also by going, a ladder stitch is basically you're going back through the bead before, but I like to go under the thread bridge too. So here's what I mean. Go under that thread bridge. See it there? And then go ahead and come back up through the pink bead. So it's a ladder stitch with a trip under the thread bridge first. And it puts you right there. And everything just pops right into place. If you feel like it needs more, you can go back through the beads again, but I think it's okay. And that's how I do those. It puts you in a weird spot though for the next row. So let's take a look at the next row. Slide this over really quick. And what I got here is we just did the increase row. And so I'm here. And what I want to do is put A, B, C. So my A has to sit above these two beads. It's just a standard regular decrease start. But my thread's exiting from the B bead this time. That's totally okay. Because what I'm going to do is just put that in the first thread bridge, even though I'm on one side. So let's grab the A bead. And we're just going to put it in the first thread bridge, even though we're going out of the B bead. See the B bead here? Still go under that first one. And it's going to work just fine. It's still going to come up from underneath it. And it's just going to sit right there. So our next bead is let's look at that. It's a B. And I'm flipping this in my hand because working from left to right for me is comfortable. And luckily this pattern is symmetrical from left to right. So that's just what I'm doing here. I need a C. Okay. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 Ds. Let's do that real quick. So I'm speeding up just a little because I want to be able to show you guys from start to finish. That was something I was hoping. I know we did a jump ahead on a few rows there, but they looked just like this one as far as the method. There's number 3. And here's number 4. Okay. And then C, B, and A. And so that was just a good old regular row. So super easy. We have a thread bridge for everyone. And that one's good. Okay, just a few more to go. Let me get on the next one. So we did this one, we did that one. Now it's just A, B, B. Okay. And again, I'm just flipping it just for comfort for me to work fast. There's B, and I need one more B. Here's the C, that's the middle bead. And I've got one more D. And we have a small decrease coming up. That's bigger than one bead that we can show really quick. So you'll get to see 2 different decreases going on. A long time ago, I think it was, gosh, well, my youngest was 3, so that was a while ago. He's 8 now. But I went to a workshop, and it was cool. It was like 6 hours of beading, and they taught us how to make snowflakes. But I noticed that everybody had their own way. Like everyone had their own like brick stitch method. So literally everything I'm showing you is just what I adopted because I liked it. And there's always some other ways to do it. So that row was this one here. Let me bring this back over. So we did this one. So now we've just got to do one more, and then there's another decrease I want to show you. So I'm going to zip through this next one here. 2 A's. And again, just flipping that. For me, it gets really hard when they're not symmetrical left to right. That one challenges me. Like, I don't know if I could do that on a live and not make a mistake because it takes super focus. Okay, I need 2 C's. There's 2 C's. Okay, we need one more B. And I was seeing in the chat that you guys are already getting excited about the upgrades. Yeah, BD goodness is coming, guys. There's going to be new beads at Michael's. They're getting so many cool new things. And those classes are up. You can find them. You can register. I think there's they're going to be like a big unveil. So right now you can register, but you can't really totally see the pictures. All right, so I finished that row. There we go. And now I've got a decrease. This decrease is different than the last one because it's let me just refresh what we got here. We did this big decrease here where we had to go in 2 thread bridges, right? We came out with bead, went down 1 and up 1. This one's 1 bead shorter. And so not tricky, but just something to think about. So we just finished that row right there, the one that I'm putting my ruler underneath. We finished that. And now we've got to put the first bead into the 2nd thread bridge. But weaving to it, it's a little tricky because you have to come out of this bead, which is where we are now. Go down through this one, and then you'd be back out to the B bead, but I'm just going to do that. I'm going to come out of that B bead and put that A bead on, and I'm going to let the thread show on the inside. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's go down through this bead, which is the next A bead in my row. Just down through that one and up through the B bead. And spin if you need to, get that to hide. And I know that my first bead for this row is an A bead, and then it needs to go on the 2nd thread bridge. And I know that just because in the diagram it's straddling these 2 beads right here. So I'm going to just go under that. And this thread showing on the side will actually show in between this bead and the one I add after this. See how it's kind of sitting like that. And so there it is. And our next bead is going to be 3 B's. And our time is getting tight, but I'm going to go really, really fast here. My timing was perfect, except for I messed up our peyote row and had to pull that out. I literally had it down to the second, but that mistake cost me. So I almost made it, almost did. Okay. All right. Okay, so we do have one more row to do still, but it's a very easy, simple 4 A's. Throw them on super, super fast. I flip left to right here. It's easier for me. And so that bee pattern, the bee pattern I was mentioning, we did that in spring last year, I think. The cool thing about that pattern is that it has white around it like this, so you can use white thread and you don't see it. I've got a knot. If you get a knot with brick stitch, oh, I'm so sorry, because it's very hard to fix, but I'm gonna see what I can do here. I just have to be super careful. And of course it was on my last bead. Why not? Okay. Okay, so as I'm going under this thread bridge, it's gonna hiccup on me. So I'm gonna floss the teeth here. There we go. And what I meant by that is I brought the bead, it has a knot. If it wasn't my last bead and I had more, I would actually cut it and weave in, because it's very hard to get a knot under a thread bridge. But what you can do if you get a knot like this is go ahead and bring your needle, like instead of getting the thread bridge, go in between the beads. You'll be able to get the knot through that, but not under the thread bridge for some reason. So that's what I did there. I just I had the needle through it and I just pulled each side of the strand down. And they call it, I actually learned this in that class, they called it flossing the teeth. You just come down in between and then pull that knot through and come back up. So the good news is weaving in with that little knot's not going to be a problem. It'll be okay. So we're super, super close. Weaving in, I showed that a little bit above. I do the same thing here. Just go ahead and bring these down. Go through just a few tiny little beads. I thought not there blocking me, but it could actually help me weave in too. Maybe. But I really wanted to show how to do the gluing. So you guys have all seen how to do a weave in. So I'm not going to harp on that too much. You would just want to, I can show you trimming this one because that one's already woven in. This is my tail. I ended up not needing it. And so you just push down with your scissors and pull up. If you have a burner, use that, but push down, pull up. And you'll get, and I've got something here I need to work on. So I'm not going to trim this one yet. I want to be able to fix that. But I am going to show how to glue it because that will, I'll just weave in on the sides. I'm going to grab these stud earrings here. And these are in the handout. You can find them there. Just pick that up. And I like to put the glue on this on the back of the post, not on the beads themselves, and then flatten it out. And what you can do is you can use any kind of glue. You can use Aleene's. Actually, I really like this one a lot because it's made to adhere, glass and metal specifically. It's really cool. You can also use hypo cement. Either's fine. I need to go downstairs and get some pliers from the garage and open this because I must have just glued. I wasn't able to open it before class. So I'm going to show you with hypo cement today. They all work. They're all fine. But you can use really any kind of glue. Just double check that it's not like for fabric or something. But if it's for plastics, metals, all that, it's going to be okay. And the glues are different, you know, depending on how they come out. But try to make it flat. So in this case, I just went a little bit flat onto this one here. And then I'm just going to pick up the post right here and just go flat down. See if I can get it. And try to center it, but it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, just get it where, right around where it should go. I'm just going to put a little pressure for a second, not too long. So check the manufacturer's instructions. If you're using this one or the GS Hypo, maybe for 5 minutes, don't pick it up by the post. The curing time might be different, but as far as being able to just lift it, just pick it up like that and set it aside. let it dry for a little bit before you try to wear it, put the posts on or anything. It also really helps if while you're doing the gluing that it doesn't squish out along the side. And if it does, you can kind of wipe it. But the reason I usually try to make sure it doesn't do that is it's kind of good if you don't have the, let me grab this one. If the glue doesn't touch your skin. So like, for example, if you've got glue splooshing out, glue splooshing out over here, while it's still wet, maybe just try to take your fingernail and just wipe it, because I mean, most people will be fine, but if you have sensitive skin and the glue is sticking out on the sides, it can be a little irritating. But I was able to keep that one and all of these with no splooshes, see? So a little bit goes a long way. Easy does it. Not too much glue. Just get that to stick. And then, you know, I actually, no matter what my glue says, I read them maybe sometimes, but I wait 24 hours before I try to put on the nut and put it onto any kind of card or anything, or wear it. 24 hours is good. And that way you'll know that it's a good glue and that you don't have to redo it or anything. All right, so we made it, and I went over a smidge there. Sorry about that, guys. But that's the flower power earrings, and they look really cool on. They're very standout. They stand out really nicely. And if you do different colors, like you could do like a purple, you could do maybe like a bright green, and look online for patterns, because there's a lot of really, really great bead artists out there that sell their patterns on places like Etsy, and you can find them and make them and make a whole little garden, make some, I want to make a strawberry pattern. For some reason, I woke up this morning deciding I needed that. So maybe I'll post that later if I get that done. All right, so I'd love to see you guys next time. So next week, I am on vacation. It's summer here, so we're taking the boys to see the grandparents. So I won't be here next Friday, but I'll be back the Friday after that. So we're gonna do a stash buster. So if you have a bunch of beads left over, grab those. Thank you, Wanda. If you have a bunch of them, grab them. These are all beads that we've used in projects over the last year that I gathered all together and put together. And then I found a bicone that I liked. Sorry, not a bicone, a reel that I liked. It was on the Michaels semi-precious strand wall. And I was there on a day when they had like a cool strand sale. So I grabbed those, and I found a little cool way we can wrap them into something. And don't stress about the beads on here, because this is going to work with any beads you have, literally any beads. Just bring them and we'll have a de-stash party. All right, so I can't wait to see you guys then. And happy beading in the meanwhile. And if you post to Make It With Michaels and hashtag John Bead, we love seeing your work. It makes our day. But thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Hearts.